The United States Supreme Court has thrust itself into the heart of a political storm, stepping into a debate that could reshape the nation's approach to global trade and presidential power for years to come. The justices have agreed to review President Trump's sweeping tariff plan, a move that has sent shockwaves through Washington and the international community alike. On October 4, 2025, the court scheduled full arguments for November, setting the stage for a historic legal battle. The future of Trump's tariffs and the very limits of presidential trade power now hang in the balance. Trump's plan, a cornerstone of his America First agenda, has ignited fierce debate at home and abroad, fueling uncertainty in global markets and sparking protests from both supporters and critics. Critics argue Trump has overstepped his authority, waging trade wars that have driven up costs for American consumers and put pressure on small businesses already struggling to survive. The court's decision to hear the case signals just how serious and far-reaching the constitutional questions at stake truly are, drawing national attention to the courtroom. At the heart of the case is a fundamental question. How far can a president go in reshaping trade policy without direct approval from Congress? The answer could alter the balance of power in Washington. The outcome could redefine presidential authority in international trade for generations, setting new boundaries for executive action and congressional oversight. For now, the tariffs remain in place, but their fate, and the delicate balance of power between Congress and the White House, hangs in the balance as the nation awaits the court's decision. The justices understand that their ruling will set a precedent for decades to come, shaping not only trade policy, but the very nature of presidential authority in America. The Supreme Court's tariff case is about more than taxes. It's a test of presidential power. Trump's team claims old trade laws give the president broad authority to impose tariffs for national security or to fight unfair trade. Opponents, including major businesses, say this is executive overreach and that Congress, not the president, controls foreign commerce. Billions are at stake. Tariffs have raised costs for manufacturers and consumers, while retaliatory measures have battered American exports. The legal uncertainty has frozen business investment and planning. If the court sides with Trump, future presidents could wield tariffs as a blunt tool of foreign policy. A ruling against him would force more collaboration with Congress, slowing and complicating trade policy. The justices' decision will shape the future of American economic governance. The Supreme Court is also refereeing a showdown over the independence of the Federal Reserve, a critical institution in the U.S. financial system. In August 2025, former President Donald Trump tried to fire Fed Governor Lisa Cook, citing old, unproven allegations that had previously been dismissed. Cook refused to step down, arguing that the law protects Federal Reserve governors from being fired without legitimate cause, ensuring their independence. The administration claims the president's stated reason is sufficient. However, Cook's legal team calls it a pretext to oust a dissenting voice within the Federal Reserve. A lower court sided with Cook, blocking her removal for now, stating that the allegations were not enough to justify her dismissal. The Supreme Court will hear arguments in January, revisiting a precedent that shields independent agency leaders from presidential whims, a cornerstone of their autonomy. If the court weakens these protections, it could allow presidents to fire officials at will, reshaping the federal government's structure and potentially undermining the independence of key agencies. The fate of Lisa Cook is now a significant test of checks and balances in Washington, highlighting the ongoing struggle between executive power and independent oversight. The outcome of this case could redefine the independence of agencies like the Federal Reserve for decades to come, setting a precedent for future administrations. While major cases move through the regular docket, following a process that can take months or even years, there's another, lesser-known path for urgent legal disputes. Much of the Trump administration's most consequential legal action has played out on the Supreme Court's so-called shadow docket, a term for emergency orders and summary decisions issued outside the court's normal schedule. This emergency process allows the court to make quick, often unsigned decisions, sometimes in the middle of the night, with little explanation or public debate. These rulings can let controversial policies take effect before a full review, shaping national policy in real time and often catching the public off guard. Since Trump's return, the court's conservative majority has granted most of his emergency requests, using the shadow docket to fast-track decisions. This has meant rapid changes to policies on issues ranging from military bans to mass firings, with little time for lower courts or the public to weigh in. Liberal justices have sharply criticized this trend, arguing that it bypasses the court's usual deliberative process. They warn it undermines transparency, public trust, and the legitimacy of the court's decisions, especially when the reasoning is hidden from view. Critics say the court is acting more like a political player than a neutral umpire, raising concerns about the separation of powers and the rule of law. Recently, the court has slowed its emergency interventions, perhaps in response to mounting criticism and calls for reform. Now, big cases like tariffs and disputes involving the Federal Reserve are being moved to the regular docket where arguments and opinions are public. This shift may signal a recognition that fundamental questions of presidential power and national policy demand full, public deliberation and transparency. The future of the shadow docket and its impact on the rule of law remains uncertain, as the court faces growing scrutiny over how it wields its emergency powers. This Supreme Court term could redefine the American presidency. Beyond tariffs and the Fed, the justices will confront issues like birthright citizenship and campaign finance, each with the potential to expand or limit executive power. Trump's executive order challenging the 14th Amendment's guarantee of citizenship could trigger a constitutional showdown. A campaign finance case could let presidents direct vast sums of party money, further entrenching incumbents. Public skepticism is high. Polls show many Americans doubt the court's independence, fearing its bending to presidential pressure. The justices' rulings will either check the imperial presidency or grant it new powers. Their decisions will shape not just Trump's legacy, but the very nature of the presidency for years to come. The court's legitimacy is on the line as it navigates these historic questions. The Supreme Court faces these monumental cases amid deep ideological division. The 6-3 conservative majority often supports expansive presidential power, especially under a Republican president. Liberal justices warn this approach threatens checks and balances, and the court's credibility. The conservative bloc favors originalism and the unitary executive theory, backing Trump's authority over agencies and trade. Liberals argue for precedent and stability, defending independent agencies as vital to modern governance. The court will also decide on hot-button issues like LGBTQ+ rights and voting laws, likely along familiar ideological lines. Each decision risks reinforcing the view that the court is a political, not legal, institution. The stakes for the court's reputation and the country's future couldn't be higher. As the Supreme Court tackles its most consequential term in decades, the stakes for American democracy are enormous. The justices' rulings on tariffs, agency independence, and executive power will shape the presidency for generations. If the court sides with Trump, the executive branch could gain sweeping new authority, reshaping the balance of power. A check on the president would reaffirm Congress and the judiciary's role, but could also slow government action. The court's legitimacy is under intense scrutiny, with every move watched for signs of political bias. Chief Justice Roberts and his colleagues face the challenge of delivering decisions grounded in law, not politics. The outcome will determine not just the limits of presidential power, but the public's faith in the Supreme Court itself. The legacy of this term will echo for years in American law and politics.